Here's the thing, you see all these builders make worlds that are full of life, but your builds just feel dead. So do they know some kind of secret trick that you don't? Well, yeah, actually they do. So if you're tired of building like this, then I'm gonna show you the one trick pro builders know that allows them to build worlds that feel alive, and you'll never look at building the same again. So what's the trick? Well, it's atmosphere. In art, atmosphere refers to the tone or mood of a place. So the reason your builds feel boring is because they don't have a vibe to them. But then how do we create that vibe? Well, it's actually pretty simple. So let's start with composition. Usually you'll see people use composition in art, but if you look at castles, they're always seen from far. This makes them look really cool and it shows how big they are. Because of the composition, they feel super impressive. So how do we apply this to Minecraft? Well, for me, I like to start with deciding the vibe I want for my build. I choose if I want it to feel impressive like a castle, or if I want it to feel another way. When you're creating your composition, you also have to think of layering. In general, there's a foreground, mid-ground, and a background. For this to look good, we need to make sure fog is turned on. If not, you won't get the same effect. But you can see how the color starts to fade as we move from the foreground to the mid-ground and then the background. When the blocks are further away, there's more fog, and that tricks your brain into thinking that that build is bigger. This effect is called atmospheric perspective, and if we take a look at B-Dubs' build, you can see how he uses composition to make the front trees appear close, the house a little further, and then the mountains are way in the background in the fog. And since there's so much fog in the mountains, it makes them look a lot bigger than they actually are. We can use this to make our builds feel more impressive if we build them far away. It'll make them look bigger and more impressive than they really are. Or if you want to add a mountain behind your build, you can use this trick to add that imposing feeling to your build. You can even fake fog, but we'll talk about that later with color. After I know what kind of composition I want, I can then decide where I want to place my build based on how I want it to feel. But before we start building, there's still one more thing we need to decide. So you can use composition to create atmosphere, but you can also use color. Here you can see all four drawings give off a very different feeling, even though it's technically all the same drawing, just using different colors. This also depends on which biome you want to build. If it's in a snowy biome, you can use more blue blocks to make it look like it's cold. And what's cool is different colors also give off a different feeling. For example, warm colors like red and orange feel happy and energetic, and cold colors like blue feel calm and mysterious. If we take two colors on opposite sides of the color wheel, we have what are called complementary colors. These colors contrast each other and they give off excitement. There's also light and dark colors which can look moody or energetic, and you can even mix these for some contrast and a different vibe. You can also use gradients to create artificial shadows. For example, you can go from a light color to a dark one, and you can use that gradient where there would be shadows. If you do this on a big build, it can make it feel even bigger and more imposing. Like I mentioned earlier, you can also use color to basically make fog. The way we can do this is by using a very saturated color in the foreground, and then a less saturated color in the midground, and a very desaturated color in the background. You can also do this with white glass if you want. Just layer it like this and it'll look like fog from far away. You can use this effect on mountains or even builds to make them look bigger and more imposing in the background. With all that information, we can start terraforming to give our build more atmosphere. If we take these two drawings, you can tell one of them feels very impressive, but the other one feels cozy and it's kind of relaxing. So if we want a similar vibe to this one, we can build some very big dramatic rocks and get a mind-blowing vibe. Or you can build a small forest, add a pond and some small bushes, and now this feels cozy. But terraforming's not easy, so here's how I make it easy. When it comes to rocks, you have two kinds. In general, there's pointy rocks and smooth round rocks. You can make your rocks feel sharp or smooth with shading. I made a whole video just talking about this, but in general, I'm using a gradient going from light gray to very dark gray, and the faster you transition from one color to another, the sharper it looks. For example, these rocks look very rough because the gradient transitions pretty fast, and these look very soft because the gradient transitions more slowly. When you're terraforming, pretend you're taking really big rocks and stacking them up on top of each other. That way you can see the different rocks and it's not a flat wall of stone. This is pretty much how rocks work in real life, so this makes it look even more realistic. Rocks can literally have any shape, so look at real life inspiration and that should help you out. When it comes to terrain, try to use very organic lines. What I mean is try to make sure you're not making any repetitive patterns like this. Let's say you're making some rolling hills, don't make a straight line going down. That'll look way too repetitive and fake. Instead, add some curves in the grass and you can tell the difference this makes. For trees, it's not easy, but we can split it up into 3 easy steps. First, you want to start with the trunk. This is the middle part of the tree. When you're building trees, try to find inspiration because it'll help you see how all the branches work together. At this stage, we just want to make sure we're happy with the height as well as the size of the trunk. Once that looks good, we can move on to the branches. This is the most important part of any custom tree, so if you're not sure how branches work in trees, then try to follow your inspiration. A good rule of thumb is that branches branches always want to go toward the sun. So that means that the branches are all going to reach out as much as possible to get a little bit of sun. Like I said, take your time on this step because if you have a good branch structure, then your tree will most likely look good as well. You can use pictures of trees with no leaves as inspiration, and it should help you get a good branch structure and kind of see how all the branches work together. With leaves, you want to find a good middle point between too many leaves and not enough. You want to make sure to leave some spots empty because in real life, you can see through the leaves unless there's a lot of them. So try to leave some spots empty so it's a little more realistic. In general, you should be able to see through the tree from a couple different angles. And that's pretty much how you make a custom tree. There's all kinds of trees you can make. For example, all of these options of trees you could build. And there's also a lot of different versions of rocks you could build. So what I recommend you do is go on Pinterest, find some inspiration, try to rebuild some rocks, trees, and even landscapes you like. And with a bit of practice, you'll be able to build any kind of terrain. Also, like in these examples, you don't necessarily have to make your terrain a typical Minecraft biome. You can create your own biome, so don't be scared to experiment with different blocks and shapes. But if we want to build an atmosphere, it's also important to understand shape. What I mean is different shapes can give off a different vibe. So it's important to understand them because round shapes are usually more calm, they look friendly and safe, but on the other side, spikes and triangles feel dangerous, and they add movement to your build. So if you want to make a scary castle, you could use very pointy rocks to give it a feeling of danger. Or you could even choose to make very round rocks to build a soft and peaceful terrain. So using terraforming, we can create that atmosphere and add life to our builds. But add a build in here and it still feels kind of dead. I mean, it's better, but it's missing something, and that's detail. See this bench and this bridge? Yeah, well, they're all adding to the atmosphere and the cozy vibe of this drawing. So if we want our build to look alive, then it needs to look like there's life there. What do I mean? Well, you have to pretend there's real people living here. If they want to spend some time outside, where can they relax? There's a bunch of different details you can add, but make sure you're not adding too much detail to the point that it takes away the attention from the actual build. But just a simple change like this makes it feel so much more alive. If you don't know what kind of details to add, just ask ChatGPT and it'll give you a list of things you could add. Or even go on Pinterest and search up build hacks and you'll get a ton of ideas. But some of my favorites are small carts, campfires, and barrels. With all the details on the outside, our build feels special now. But if you want to make your build stand out and look better than most builds out there, then you can detail the interior as well. This is the smallest change, but you can now see stuff through the windows and it makes the build so much more alive. But if you're lazy like me and you don't like building interiors, then you can just put frog lights and it looks like there's light coming from inside. And that can make it feel pretty cool too. Okay, so this is my build. You can tell I used my composition to make it feel like there's a big forest in the background. I did this using fog. I also chose colors that feel friendly and cozy. Then my terraforming is very soft, there's not too many sharp lines, and the trees make it feel closed in and safe. Finally, all the small details bring it together, and if we look at it from this angle, it feels like it's full of life. So that's exactly how pros make any build feel alive. Hopefully this video was helpful, and have a great rest of your day.